Hey guys, we've talked about groups before, being part of a group in Japan and what that can mean sometimes. Just wanted to sort of elaborate on that a little bit further. As far as being part of groups and the money, basically, it's a bit of a touchy subject, isn't it? But we sort of have to address it because it will catch you. What's triggered this is we just had a lady turn up at the house today asking for 4,000 yen, and she turned up with a receipt book in her hand and had it open. So sort of came in the door, you know, excuse me, she called out, and I came out and she had the receipt book in her hand with a pen, and she said, I'm from the local area group, and you know, if you don't mind very much, I'd like to collect 4,000 yen, right, which is about $40 or more. So okay, so that's what triggered this video, because last year when she came around, after she came around last year, I was really curious what that group actually does, because I haven't actually seen anything that they do in our area. And so after she came around last year and collected the $40, I asked one of the neighbours, really diplomatically, you got to be really careful with things like that, because Japanese people usually, if you ask a question or raise a topic, usually they're really aware of your motivation. Idle curiosity is not usually a motivation to ask a question like that. So they're usually a little bit they read into it. If you ask a question, they'll read into why you're asking that question. So you gotta be really careful with questions like this. But just in passing, I said that this lovely lady from down the road had dropped in to collect money for the group, and then just in passing I said, look, what is it? I don't really know that group, what that group do. What does that group do? And the lady said, the neighbour said that group has lots of meetings and makes sure that everything in our area is going well, or something like that, the equivalent of saying something like that. And that was it. And then a week or two later, the opportunity arose, talking to the old guy on the other side, the other neighbour, the opportunity arose when we were talking to him to break the ice with him about that topic too. Something else came up that led to that, and I asked him, what is it that group, I said the name of the group, what is it that group actually does in this area? And he said something about how they organise festivals and things. And then I said to him, oh, and then sort of I was all confused, I didn't quite understand. I said to him, oh really, but don't when the festival's on, don't they come around and collect other money for the festivals? And he said yes. So the end result was that we couldn't really nail down what the $40 was for. There wasn't really, no one seemed to know. And this is the other thing is too, nobody wants to start asking questions like that because it might cause other people embarrassment. So usually people don't ask questions about things like that. So there was no real explanation, which when you consider there could be in that group, no idea how many households, there could be 500, there could be 1,000 households, all paying $40 each. That's a lot of money, and all we could really get from it was that there's some guys, usually the older guys, some old guys that have meetings now and again and talk about our area stuff. That's all we could get to the bottom of. So hard to know where that amount of money could go. But the point of this video is that when you're part of a group here, this does tend to happen quite a lot. That of course as far as your house is concerned, your home is concerned, if you live in a house or an apartment here, this will happen. And if you're in an apartment, the apartment may well have a group as well, like a body corporate who'll come around and collect money, which is quite normal in lots of other countries as well, isn't it? But you don't always get a really good explanation. And then the local area, like the local block or 2 blocks, will probably have a group which will come around and collect money. And you know, then the bigger area will have a group that come around and collect money. And of course, if you do actually own a house here, you'll be paying tax, like rates or city tax on the land itself or the house itself, and then of course you'll be paying tax to the government, you know, so you already have that. So the tax that you'll pay to the government and the tax that you'll pay to the city will turn up in the mail, and it'll be a proper tax form, and you've got to pay it, you know. There's laws about that, and in actual fact, if you don't pay your taxes here, you'll never be able to renew your visas. And if you end up getting charged with any tax breaches of the tax law here, it can get you evicted, not evicted, deported. So obviously your taxes, you've got to pay your taxes. But this money that the groups collect, of course, it's not mandatory. You don't have to pay it. So it is a bit of a thing, because, you know, having people just turn up at your doorstep and say, hi, I'm here to collect your $40, and they've got the receipt book open and the pen in their hand. You know, I'm here to collect your $40 for the local group, you know, and there's a few of them. There can be quite a lot. And if you're in an older area, it's in a sort of an established area with lots of groups. And then, as mentioned just earlier there about the festivals, when there's festivals on, they'll turn up to collect money for the festivals. And often, not always, but often they'll turn up and say, you know, we've got the spring festival coming up and we're collecting money for it. And in actual fact, traditionally what they do, and they still do it, is that they have a big sign up at the festival itself. So maybe at the temple or at the shrine, where maybe if there's a procession that goes through the town and ends up at the temple or ends up at the shrine, that place where it all ends up happening and everybody ends up going, there'll often be a big wall up. We'll have to show you this one day, actually. It's interesting. Big wall up with everybody's names. And they're all the names of the people who donated money to the festival. And so it's a bit of a thing. Everyone gets to know if you donated money to the festival or not. And this is the sort of the point of the video, is that, you know, a lot of these group things you don't have to pay, but if you don't pay, you're going to isolate yourself even more than what you already are. And in these communities, it can be, you know, you're not as likely to get the help that you need when you need it, or it's probably better to pay it. And again, as with all our how-to videos, you know, people have a choice what they do. But yeah, as painful as it can be sometimes, particularly when you get a few of these in a row, you know, you get someone turn up one week and someone turn up 2 weeks later, and they keep putting their hand out for more money, and it can be tempting not just to say, oh no, sorry, because you can if you want to, but it's probably better to pay it, because it's just going to isolate you even more if you don't. And they will know. They do tend to have lists, you know, who pays and who doesn't. And then that's where you live. That's the apartment or the house where you live. And then, of course, any group that you're involved in, you'll get more of the same. So, for example, if you're in a martial arts group or something like that, you'll have gesha that you pay every month, of course, which is pretty normal anywhere around the world, isn't it? If you're part of a club, you'll have some sort of monthly or yearly payment that you'll have to make to the club or the group. That's perfectly normal. But then, too, there'll be others that pop up where they say to you, you know, we've got this event coming up and we're sort of collecting 5,000 yen from everybody. Or, you know, recently we had one, Dai Sensei, so that the head teacher of our martial arts group was going to Tokyo for some event, some martial arts event, and so they basically came around and said, we're collecting 5,000 yen from everybody to give to our teacher to send him to Tokyo to go to this event. So again, you don't have to, but you know, everybody's doing it, so you know, you're sort of better off doing it. And another one is too, actually, while we're on this, is you get other events that happen, like end of year parties, embukai, end of year parties, and beginning of year parties, and all sorts of other parties that groups have as well. And you'll get told, okay, Sunday we're going to some izakaya, and you know, it's all you can drink and all you can eat, and it's 5,000 yen or it's 6,000 yen or whatever it happens to be. And it's possible you look at it and you'll say, well, that's 4 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm actually going out to dinner that night, so okay, yeah, I can go to this, but I'll only be there for an hour or so and then I'll leave, and I won't be eating and I won't be drinking. I'll just turn up and be there just because it's the right thing to do, and then I'll leave and go off to dinner, so I won't be eating and I won't be drinking. But you'll still be paying the 5,000 or 6,000 yen, the $50 or $60. And again, this is just another way that you're sort of donating to the group. You're contributing to the group by paying that money. Even though most of it probably just goes straight to the restaurant that will actually, you know, just keep the money anyway. But it's sort of one of those things where you just sort of got to carry your weight, you got to pull your weight. So, you know, it's obligation. It's sort of, you're obliged, and people who don't question it so much, you know, in a lot of other countries, if you're part of a group or a club or something, and there's some sort of fee or something like that, people will openly question it, won't they? And say, "What's this for again? What am I getting for this? You know, what's this $50 for the local group? You know, and they'll want to know." In actual fact, a lot of groups and organisations usually give you some sort of accounting as well to show you where the money's gone. And in actual fact, that does happen here too, in martial arts groups here and in other groups here. Sometimes they do that once a year they give you an account that shows you where all the money's gone. So the club brought in this amount of money, you know, it spent money on this, this and this, and this is what's left over at the bank. Quite often they do that, but also quite often they don't. So, and it's when they don't, that can be tricky, you know. If you're used to coming from a place where things are more sort of explained and more sort of transparent and so on, it can be difficult, you know, when someone you don't know or someone you've sort of seen from a distance turns up at your doorstep with a receipt book and a pen. I'm here to collect your $50. So it's sort of, it comes around, it does come around. I mean, the way it's sort of seen here, and we've mentioned this about groups before here, is either you're part of the group or you're not. And, you know, you can choose not. You can choose to be not part of the group, and you can choose to, you know, not participate in things and not pay your money and just isolate yourself. You can choose to do that, but, you know, if you've done that, if you've isolated yourself from the group, there'll be other consequences from that too, you know, like, not as much punishment, it's more the other way. It's more that if you participate in the groups here, that there is often flow on from that. Not to suggest that we should only do the right thing just so that we get some benefit, but just pointing out that usually here it does flow in one direction or another. And if you don't participate in the group, well, let's say if you do participate in the group and you do go to the events that maybe you don't particularly want to go to, and you do spend the money that you don't particularly want to spend, that being part of the group can have consequences that can be good. You know, there could be, who knows what could flow from that. You'll find that, you know, people might be helping you out when you need help, being helped out, or, you know, who knows, but it's just that we've seen it here, that, you know, people that do come and say that they want to do it all their own way, and you know, they can, but usually it doesn't usually work out real well. They tend to end up isolated off, and then if they do need, you know, an apartment, or they do need something like that people just won't step up. They'll go, well, no, and they just, you know, find themselves really on their own. So yeah, bottom line, when the person turns up at the door, and you're better off not questioning them. It's the questioning that we did of our neighbours was, we have to really wait for the right time, when it was sort of something else came up that was along the same lines, and that sort of gave us an excuse to sort of say, hey, look, what is that group? Don't really know that group. What does that group do? But you got to be really careful with things like that. You know, we've talked about this before, that people tend to read behind the words, is the way it's said in Japanese. Read behind the words, read between the lines. And if you ask a question about something, or it can make people really uncomfortable. So, and again, you know, you can if you want to. Who are you? What are you doing? What's this $50 for? Where does it go? You can if you want to, but we'd suggest you're probably better off not. Just bite the bullet, pay the money, and smile a lot. Yes, and then thank them. That's the other thing. When you give them the $50, thank them, because they're doing their bit for the community. You know, and on the upside too, I mean, that's one thing. You know, a lot of countries around the world, with people becoming more and more selfish, you know, a lot of countries around the world, societies become really sort of insulated, and people become insulated from each other, and, you know, it's one of the reasons why crime rates are so high, and, you know, places aren't so clean as they could be, and things like that. I mean, the advantage of these groups in Japan, and the local area groups and things, you know, sometimes it can feel a little bit like everybody's watching you, you know, and there's seems to be forever people turning up on your doorstep about different things, and it can feel a bit intrusive sometimes. But the upside of it is that the communities generally here are generally really clean, tidy, as you can see, and usually crime free, and you know, usually pretty good, clean, safe places to live. That's the upside of all these groups. So if you can sort of look at it like that it's just part of the deal. I mean, all these things in Japan are like that. You know, we often make videos about things like this and people go, oh, I don't like that. But it's a package deal. You know, if you live here long term, you've sort of got to weigh it up, and the advantages and the disadvantages. And, you know, people do, of course. And the reality is that a high percentage of foreigners that come try and live in Japan don't last and go home. You know, they think they're going to come here for a year or 2 years or forever. And you know, 3 or 4 months later they go home. There's statistics on the net about this. Really high percentage of people just don't last, because they weigh it up. It's not worth it. They're away from their friends and family in their own country. They're doing a lot of things here they're not particularly comfortable with, and in the end they weigh it up and decide it's not worth it, and they go back to their own country. That's what the majority do. You know, the people that do come here and stay here forever are a minority, and you know, they're the people that weigh these things up and say, well, you know, that's difficult and that's difficult and that's difficult, but in the big picture, this place is a really good place to live. So that's why when you hear us making videos about topics like this, you know, keep in mind we're here forever. So obviously for us it's worthwhile staying here forever. For other people it might not be, but for us it's worthwhile staying here forever. So the reason we talk about these things, someone said recently, on one of the videos like this, you just talked me out of living in Japan. Well, that's probably a good thing, because it's much better to show you everything as much as possible. We can't show you everything. We try and show you as much as possible so that you're getting a fuller picture. You know, to just show you the vending machines and the wonderful convenience stores and the good food and all that sort of thing. You know, that's one of the reasons why people don't last here, is because the only thing they've seen about Japan before they came here is all the good stuff, and then they turn up here and, you know, 3 or 4 months later go, geez, this is actually really difficult living here as a foreigner, and they go home. You know, they get a few big doses of discrimination or a few big doses of obligation that they don't want to have to do and don't like it and feel uncomfortable and find it's, you know, everything's more difficult than it was in their own country, and oh damn it, you know, I don't like this at all, and they go home. That's what happens. So that's why we think it's better to try and show you as much stuff as possible, everything. We don't stop to think about whether it's good or bad, we just show you. So that's what we're doing. We're not saying look at this is bad. What we're doing is saying look at this is what it's like in Japan. So you know, the vending machines and the discrimination and the lady knocking on your door wanting $50 to show you that as much as possible. And then if some people go, oh, I don't think I could live with that, well, that's good. We've just saved you a lot of money, because if we hadn't have pointed that out, you would have, you know, quit your job and spent a whole heap of money coming here and then finding out that you didn't like it. So we figure it's much better, show you as much as we can first, and then you can make an informed decision. If you still think you can be happy here, and then come on over, you know. That's our thinking about those topics. So there it was. If you're a part of the group, you're probably best being part of the group. Anyway, hope somebody found that interesting. More videos coming soon.